Are we ready to go, Amanda?
We are ready to go.
Thank you. It's 6:30, so I'm going to call to order the December 7th, 2020 Committee of the Whole meeting at exactly 6:30, and acknowledge that we are meeting on the shared traditional lands of the Coast Salish people. So first I'll do a roll call. Councillor Parkinson?
I'm here.
Councillor Day? No, I saw an email. I don't think she's here today. Can anybody confirm that?
She is not attending this evening.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Jansen?
I'm here, Michael.
Councillor Kobayashi?
Here.
Councillor Logan?
I'm here, Mr. Chair.
And Mayor Martin, I've already heard you speak, so you're obviously...
Yep. I am here, and I am going to be fixing my virtual background in a second. Unfortunately, I updated my iPad yesterday, and it deleted all the virtual backgrounds. So, not breaking a rule, folks.
Okay, so first item of business is the approval of the agenda, the near-term agenda, long-term agenda, and the committee of the whole agenda. Anybody want to move all three of those? Hang on a second. Oh, we got a bunch of hands up, so I'll say Councillor Logan, you're at the top of the list. And does anybody object to adopting these agendas or approving these agendas? I'm not seeing any. So that's approved. Adoption of the minutes of Committee of the Whole, November 16th, 2020. Councillor Kobayashi moved that. Is there any objection to adopting those minutes? I see no hands of objection, so that's those minutes are adopted. And now public participation. Amanda, do we have any written submissions or anyone registered to speak?
There's no one registered to speak, and we haven't received any written submissions relating to items on the agenda.
Okay. In that case, we will move on to new business. And first item of business is options for Colwood participation in the Clean BC Better Homes rebate program. Jill Collinson, are you going to give this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you may recently recall a presentation was offered from a community group related to the Clean BC Better Homes report. Following this, council resolved staff provide a report with options for potential top-up incentives for Colwood if we so chose to participate. That's what's before you this evening. So the Clean BC Better Homes rebate program is a provincially funded rebate program for homeowners to undertake building envelope improvements and to switch to higher efficiency heating equipment. Through this program, local governments can choose to offer financial top-up incentives via 6 different options at specified valuations. The municipal top-up program administration is handled by the province via quarterly invoices to participating municipalities. So the 6 different top-up options are summarized within Appendix 1 attached to the report, with the exception of the window door option, Tier 2 window door, which was introduced mid-2020. Of all the top-up options, the fuel switch heat pump top-up has been the most popular across the province. So Table 1 within the report offers a summary of the top-up type, which are fuel switch heat pump, Energuide home evaluation, electric service upgrade, heat pump water heater, contractor participation incentives, and Tier 2 window door. That Table 1 also offers a summary of what the province offers through the Clean BC program, and then the valuation that the municipality may choose. And in some situations, there are 2, a lower and a higher. And then the last column is a proposed Colwood valuation. So the proposed Colwood value is based on a comparison of municipal partner incentives, sustainment of funds, available funds, as well as a residential uptake in a recent similar regional program. As well, this would be our first time participating if council so resolves to do so. So I'm available for questions if there are any.
Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question for staff. I have two questions. My first question is, with our Climate Action Reserve Fund, have we already looked at and have a priority list of what we think our top priorities are? And my second question, of the 5 initiatives that are listed here for rebates, which one of these would have the greatest impact on greenhouse gas reductions? Thank you.
Jill Collinson, would you like to speak to that?
I'm here and Ian Borhill is here as well tonight. And so for the second question about the greatest impact on greenhouse gas reductions, I would have to confirm and get back to you. I can tell you from a popular standpoint that the fuel switch heat pump program has been the biggest uptake provincially, but I don't know if that correlates with a GHG correlation at all.
And the first question is there a priority for how we were going to spend these climate reserve funds? Is there a priority list of any sort?
To date, no. Some of that I believe will come out of the low carbon resiliency fund, and perhaps Ian can elaborate more on that.
Hi, Mr. Chair, it's Ian Burhill here.
Carry on, Ian.
Yeah, Council resolved to direct the city to follow some priorities with respect to the climate emergency, or I should say some principles that we should follow. I'm just trying to find that document to relate that information, and I can do so as a follow-up to this meeting. However, we have not defined specific objectives as it would relate to the spending of the climate reserve money. It was a reserve fund that was set up as a result of the actions flowing from the climate emergency declaration, but as such, I don't believe there's a specific set of priorities attached to them.
Okay, thank you very much, Ian.
Okay, Councillor Logan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Jill, for a great report. Question to you: if we have a massive uptake, which I hope we do, on this, can we expect maybe a bit of a heads up when we might be approaching the $10,000 ceiling, and with the possibility of maybe increasing the amount that we use of the Climate Action Reserve Fund to accommodate the extra uptake?
So through the chair, so the $10,000 that's proposed, we would inform the province of the valuation as they administer the funds on our behalf and then invoice us quarterly. So we would be in communication with them surrounding when we're reaching that value. As this is a first-time program, we have no idea what the uptake would or wouldn't be. If this is a hit and we are totally out of the $10,000 funds within weeks, the intent is to bring back a report to you when either the monies are spent or in 1 year, whichever comes first.
That's great. Okay, thank you. So there will be some update one way or another. That's perfect. Thank you, Joe.
There are no more hands up. Unfortunately, I can't figure out how to put hands down on the iPad. I've always chaired from my computer, but somebody else has put them down, so that's how to do it. Okay. So,
Michael?
Yes?
Just for help, if you're on your iPad, all you do is go to participants and click participants, and then you'll see individual names and you'll see people's hands up, and you can just click there and then you can lower hand from that place.
Okay. I think my finger's just too fat and I've been clicking slightly off. Plus my eyes are off, so really it's not a good combination. But there being no more speakers, I need a mover. Did Councillor Logan move that?
Sure, I'll move it, Mr. Chair.
Okay, great. And I'd just like to say, as my 2 cents, that I'm all for this. And I think that by far the best bang for the money comes out of Energuide home evaluation, because then those experts will tell you what will give you the best improvement in your particular home. But we will put that to a vote now. And all those against?
We voting on option 1, 2, 3, or 4 then? So I'm not too clear.
I think you were moving the recommended option at the beginning of the staff report, were you not?
I was, Mr. Chair, yes.
Sorry, I'm just checking the agenda versus that. Yeah. Okay, so it's the recommendation in the agenda and also at the beginning of the report. So anybody against? Seeing no hands up, that passes. And we move on to item 2, development variance permit application DVP 20010 for 681 and 651 Allendale Road. And Richard Buchan, are you speaking to this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a variance application for 2 large temporary advertising signs associated with the Allendale District project. The bylaw currently allows for 1 3-meter squared sign per lot, and the applicant is proposing 1 12-meter squared sign per lot. Colwood has approved similar size signage in the past, and staff have included a summary of these approvals in section 4 of your report. If council authorizes the issuance of this variance, the applicant's next step will be to apply for sign permit, and the city would require a review by a qualified engineer at that time. One quick note, subject B in the draft permit attached as appendix 5 in your report makes reference to 3 signs. It should read 2. So should council approve the variance, the permit will be updated to reflect the council consideration of 2 signs. I'm here for questions if you have them, and I understand the applicant is in the audience as well. Thank you.
And Councillor Jensen, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to move the recommendation. I don't see an issue with this, and it's good advertising for the community as well.
Thank you, Councillor Jensen and Jansen. Councillor Parkinson.
Sorry, I was going to do exactly the same. The only note I would add here, and I don't think it's necessary here, we have a letter from the applicant committing to a 2-year time frame on these signs. I think it's probably good practice when we do this to have an end date on signs like this, and I would take his letter as being an end date. I'm happy with that, so I'm going to support the motion.
Thank you. And Mayor Martin.
Thank you. Actually, I was just going to parrot exactly what Councillor Parkinson just said. So could I just get some clarification though from staff around that? So as Councillor Parkinson has just said that the proponent has suggested a 2-year, what happens if it's longer than 2 years? Will it come back to this council, or does it just automatically roll over?
Richard Buchan.
Through the chair, if council would like to impose a condition that the sign be removed after 2 years, or that it come back for a variance, it can do that as a condition of the permit. We don't currently have it there, but we can certainly add it as an amendment.
So, Mayor Martin, does that satisfy you?
Yeah, and I probably would like to make that amendment when you think it's appropriate, Chair.
Okay, I'd just like to ask further clarification on your question. What is the normal practice? Is it to put a time limit on, and what is the action taken at the end of the time limit? Richard Buchan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There isn't a normal practice in these variances. They're case specific. Given that the applicant is willing to, has identified 2 years in their letter, it could be a condition on the variance as it being a 2-year approval. If they were not to remove it, we'd have to work with bylaw to find a solution there.
Okay, so I'm going to take that then, Mayor Martin, that you have moved that amendment to the resolution. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, so does anybody wish to speak to the amendment? Seeing none, all those against the amendment? Nobody opposes the amendment. The amendment is passed. Now, would anybody like to speak to the motion as amended? Seeing none there, all those against the motion? Seeing none, the motion as amended is passed. This is wonderful. I think we might be finished the meeting before I finish my cup of tea. That's amazing. So moving on to item 5.3, Yasmin Hernandez, rezoning application RZ 20005 for 1764 Island Highway. Are you speaking to this, Yasmin Hernandez?
Yes, I have also prepared a brief presentation just to walk you through the general elements of the application, and I'll just share my screen.
Thank you.
Yes. So these, can you see them? Can you see the slide?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. So this application is for the property at 1764 Island Highway. It's a rezoning application. One sec. The recommendation is lengthy, but it's as per the report. So I'll leave you to read it. But it is as per the report. The site context, so this particular location is the property is between the courthouse property and the Galaxy Motor site. It's right across from the Juan de Fuca Recreation Center. And one of the current zone for the property is highway commercial. One of the biggest aspects of among the challenges of this particular property is the topography as well as the riparian consideration. So the elevation of the property goes from roughly 42 meters at the front along Island Highway, and it drops down to about 20 meters at the rear where it meets the Millstream Creek. So there's the topography of the site requires that some of the proposed building and the development of the site will require buildings that are functioning as retaining structures. In addition to being buildings, they are retaining the soil in an effort to minimize the use of retaining walls and work with the topography of the site. Once again, the proposal is to rezone from that highway commercial use to a mixed-use employment center, the MUEC2 zone, which council approved earlier this summer when looking at the Allendale Lot A. And the objective is to allow and encourage that mixed use of commercial and industrial, light industrial development along the Island Highway mixed-use employment center corridor. The summary of uses, if you have a look at the uses that are currently permitted, they are general light industrial uses, and what we're doing in bringing forward this rezoning is expanding the range of those uses and focusing on that customer service light industrial component, having more dynamic uses. One of the aspects, most of the parameters of the zone are consistent, and the one aspect that is that will require some consideration from council at an upcoming development variance permit is the interior side yard setback. Because of that, proposed building that retains soil, that building in the middle of the lot is expected to have a 0 interior lot line on the side. So that's where that variance to the 6-meter interior lot line is expected to come forward for consideration at a later time. Then I look at the OCP review and the parameters that apply to the mixed-use employment center. So the mixed-use employment center designation is supporting and enabling ground-oriented and low-rise buildings up to 6 stories with mixed uses of commercial, light industrial, live work uses. It's residential part of the mixed-use component of the MUEC2 zone. So it's not, the residential component is not part of the MUC2 zone that was created for the Allendale district. The focus is on establishing a commercial and land use industrial use with residentials that support those uses. So there is a live work component that is enabled through the zone, but there is not a standalone apartment use or residential use. The intent is for these corridors along the Allendale district and Island Highway to remain industrial commercial as per the OCP. Then a forming character development permit will be required for this property. And there are 3 different sets of development permit guidelines that will be applied and will guide our conversations with the developer, looking at the best layout and function of the site. Perhaps one element that can be discussed in light of this rezoning application is that proximity of a building to a front property line. The current zone in the MUC2 zone has a 7.5 meter setback from the front property line. So if council wishes to reduce it or would like a built form that comes closer to the road, looking at that front yard setback and reducing it can be a consideration, and we can bring it forward as part of the development variance permit application that looks at that interior lot setback. In addition to that, the forming character DP and environmental riparian area development permit will also be required, and we will be looking at how to preserve and mitigate any impacts that development may have or could have on that riparian area. We're looking for dedication and a return of the riparian area to the crown, and that is consistent with what has been done in the properties to the right and like kind of north and south of this property. There has been a dedication back to the crown of that riparian area. So we're looking for consistency along the creek. As part of the policy review, there's no community amenity contributions that are applied to these industrial development. It only applies, and we only collect it for residential development. We've also added a consideration for council if you wish to waive a public hearing. This proposal, the bylaw is consistent with the official community plan designation for the area, so you may want to consider or wish to table that motion as part of your recommendation. In terms of transportation, we are looking and reviewing a traffic impact assessment that has been submitted to the city for review, and we'll be coming back to council with a memo letting you know what the recommendations of that study have been. That will be done prior to public hearing. Off-street parking, the concept plan currently proves out that this lot can accommodate up to 183 off-street parking stalls. We are not concerned with that being too low. We think that the off-street parking requirements are met. This proposal meets them. And public transit, we've consulted with BC Transit, and there is no appetite or need for further improvements to the transit, I guess, infrastructure along this frontage for now. The site servicing and frontage works, so the offsite works The property has the frontage along Island Highway, an existing frontage on Island Highway. And as part of the offsite work requirements, the developer will be responsible for extending Welfare Road to the standard outlined by the subdivision servicing bylaw and in coordination with the transportation management plan. And then we will also be looking at a fire underwriter survey calculation, and the site is serviced or can be serviced by a municipal water and sewer system. So ultimately, that discussion comes to a few key points: that the proposed land use and density is consistent with the intent of the mixed-use employment center. We want to focus commercial growth around intended growth areas. The efforts along Allendale and the Island Highway corridor are to establish workplace focus of commercial and light industrial uses. That intent is clear and evident from the policy direction. And we're also encouraging innovative building and use typologies. In this particular case, the innovation is that customer service orientation of the light industrial uses with a bay at the rear and the prominence of retail and commercial and more active uses located at the front of the buildings. There's increased, the proposal overall, the uses align with the uses that are permitted and recommended for the mixed use employment center. We're looking at increased property value and an increased tax base in the city of Colwood. It supports an economic hub with mixed commercial and light industrial uses, and the site could be adequately serviced with the existing network of infrastructure network. There is a notification sign posted on the property as per council policy, and prior to a public hearing, we will be providing a notification to properties within 75 meters. We've also added options for you to consider in more detail as you make your recommendation to council. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have Councillor Jansen's hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a couple of questions, and then I'm happy to move the recommendation at the tail end here. Help me out, Brent, or somebody from that side of the shop. This property cuts across Wilford Road. Is there not a right of way for a potential extension for Wilford Road that we envisioned some time ago?
Thank you very much, and sorry for the moving screen there. And through the chair to Councillor Jensen, yes, the road dedication is actually in place. So this developer isn't required to dedicate more land. It's existing today. What they are required to do is build the extension of the road. And it's quite exciting. Through this piece and the next piece, we're actually going to be building a lot closer to that view roll border. We have contemplated a cul-de-sac down at the end, not on this property, but this piece is part of that extension profile. Thanks for the question.
Thank you. This is exciting. I'm all in favor of some alternative use for this property other than a car lot, and I think anything is a step forward. But a couple of thoughts. I do have concerns about the road frontage, as Yasmin mentioned, the 7.5 meter setback, and the language that's in the official community plan about structures being near to the roadway along that stretch. I would like to see some changes there. I understand there's no live work suites here, and I just wonder if we can have a discussion around that. Brent, I would love to see us dabble in some opportunities for live work suites for small tradespeople and small business people to help support them in our community. And I'd love to hear whether that fits with this piece of property or what from the proponent.
So through the chair, I'm pleased to announce that Chris Carew and Brian Kozak are also both on the call tonight. These are items that have been discussed. There is a minor live work component that fits with the industrial typology, but not a residential specified comment. So to bring clarity to that, I'd invite Chris or Brian to be able to table part of those discussions or considerations, if I may.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, so as it relates to live work, no, we're not contemplating any residential component. We do have a presentation prepared that outlines, I guess, the basic development if you're interested in viewing that. Weren't quite sure when to introduce that, but that will give you some more detail, certainly in terms of what the plan is. Is that something that we could kick off now?
Sure.
Okay, well then I'll turn things over to Chris. Chris, why don't you run through what it is that we have presented?
Absolutely. I'll just share my screen here really quickly and pull up that presentation. In the meantime, Brian, why don't you introduce myself and Louise as well, if you don't mind?
Yeah, so just to back up a minute. So PC Urban is a developer of industrial, showcase industrial condominiums, predominantly in Vancouver. And I would encourage those that are interested to have a look at the projects that we've completed there. We have also done a couple of industrial projects now in Kelowna. The project that we're presenting here is very similar to one that was recently approved and under construction in Kelowna, which is again showcase industrial, almost retail in nature with an office component. So it is almost exactly the same kind of building that we're developing there. As Chris mentioned, he's with us, as well as Louise. Chris is our development manager, and Louise is our director of marketing and sales. On that note, I'll let you go ahead, Chris.
Great, thanks, Brian. So as Brian mentioned, we're the developer. This is quickly our team that we've assembled to bring this proposal forward. But I'll just kind of jump into what we're excited about with this project, and that's the Urban brand. So just a little more background, as Brian was alluding to date, we're proud to have completed over 1 million square feet of industrial space across Vancouver, Burnaby, Richmond, Kelowna, and now the Fraser Valley. And as a result, we're also looking forward to bringing forward another 700,000 square feet more, including this project in Colwood. So the Interurban brand, which is what we're bringing forward today, it's a higher level of design and consideration to small bay industrial space. So we set our construction standards for long-term ownership. We select superior finishes and features such as a built-in upper floor mezzanine space to help ensure business owners, investors, and their tenants will benefit into the future. And the key underlying of all this is that by providing strata for sale space, we focus on allowing small and medium businesses to own their own space so they can control their destiny for trouble-free occupancy and ultimate customization. So this is just a quick sampling of some of those projects that we've done so far. But then switching over to our project here in Colwood, as was already alluded to through Yasmin, and we'd like to thank staff for their hard work so far to this point. We're pretty excited about this location, just given it's such a high profile site with a lot of traffic, great frontage, and a lot of access points for both transit, walking, biking, and to the #1 highway, Trans-Canada Highway there. And we also think that there's a tremendous amount of transformation happening and potential in this area as part of the OCP. Which brings us to the site plan. So when we looked at the OCP and saw that this is mixed use employment center, that's what we responded to. So to kind of going back to the question about live work, we're working with staff to propose to achieve this mixed use employment by providing a mix of industrial and office spaces along the site. And as Yasmin explained, there are a couple of constraints that have led to this ultimate development pattern. The Wilford Creek setback we have here for the Riparian area there, the extension of the Wilford Road that we'll be constructing, and a significant grade change of over 70 feet from Island Highway down to the creek. And quickly going on to just a couple of renderings that we had just in the nick of time ready for this presentation here. Just to quickly situate where all the buildings are, as you can see, Island Highway is here. We've got our access to our first building, our second building, and the third building. And I'll quickly just run over what those buildings are and high-level notes on what we think might be happening in those buildings for uses. So in the first building, this is We have about 36,000 square feet, 8 bays with 6 offices on top. And as it's fronting Island Highway, this is really our showcase industrial, given the frontage and the exposure with high glazing and excellent opportunities for people to come in and access that space there. And of course, we've tried to add density to the site and more employment generating grounds by adding an office on top that would be accessed through an elevator up the middle there. There's also significant new planting that we're proposing along Island Highway and along the side yards, as well as an amenity area and excellent opportunities for pedestrian crossing through the site. Switching over to building 2. Now this is a almost complete rendering. We're just tweaking a couple of things with it, but just to give a context and idea of the grade change that we're dealing with and how we've responded to it. This top half here of the building is situated off of Island Highway, and the bottom half will be accessed off of Wilford Road. So quite a significant challenge given the steep grade, but we found a way to make it work. And we feel that the building 2 industrial uses, as well as building 3, would be more destination oriented or industrial, potentially a little more light industrial warehousing type, rather than the commercial or retail frontage we would have on building 1. And then a more polished off version of our third building here, building 3. So those are just the quick moves in high level. We're happy to discuss any of the questions you guys might have, but in the end, we think that by approving this project and moving it forward, we can help achieve the ideals of the OCP to bring mixed use employment lands to the site.
Thank you.
Michael, I had a couple of further thoughts there, and then I'm finished.
Okay, fire away.
I appreciate that, and they are nice looking buildings, and I can see that there's some challenging grade there. The office space on the front building there, will that relate to the commercial space below, or is that anticipated to be sold separately or occupied differently?
Sold separately, with an access through an elevator in the middle here with emergency stairs on the sides there. But yeah, the industrial space in the bottom will have its own mezzanine office space in the top half, as you'll see here. But they will be standalone stratified areas.
Okay, and Michael, I think that's about it for me. I'm going to go ahead and get the party started here with moving the second motion, which is absent the public hearing, because I feel that this certainly doesn't step away from the OCP. Maybe adds a few uses, but I think the impact is minimal. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Jensen, I think you already moved the recommendation. And then,
I said I would do it at the end, and that was the end. And I think the recommendation I was looking at was the second one, which was absent the public hearing.
Okay, we can do that. It might make more sense to see if council has an appetite for actually going ahead with the project first, and then.
I'm just reading what's here.
So can we go ahead with the first part on your?
Sure, go ahead. I'll move the staff recommendation to get started here, and then we'll.
Okay. And I have other speakers. So Mayor Martin.
Thank you. I'm not going to speak. Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to speak specifically to the motion just yet, but I do have a couple of just questions. Looking on page 47 of 64 in the report, which is Appendix 1, the subject property map, I assume 1764 was Galaxy Motors, but I also see that Galaxy Motors is also 1772 and 1778. And so to staff, do we anticipate, are we anticipating that Galaxy Motors is staying, or are we anticipating to see a development or new owners of that of 1772 and 1778 in the future?
Thank you very much. Through the chair, that is a very tough question for me to answer. As of right now, Galaxy Motors has removed all of their vehicles from the subject site. So not only this site, but the other lands. I am not aware of individual sales aspects with the properties to the west and east. Only this one. Sorry, Mayor Martin.
No, that's fine. The reason I asked the question is just continuity between 1764, 1772, and 1778, and that we're not like a laundry of buildings that don't have any idea or connection to each other. But that I understand what staff are saying. Again, this is much in the future, and I apologize for even asking this question because I know I shouldn't, but I'm going to ask it anyways. What is the anticipation of 1764 exiting that property? Are we going to be allowing people to turn left onto Souk Road?
So through the chair to his mayor, I actually have this thick of a volume in front of me right now, which is the traffic impact assessment. It contemplates the movements in and out of the Island Highway and ultimately contemplates them as not allowing a left in for northbound movement. So that's people going view roll direction into the site or a left out from this site. We're treating it as an informal controlled access route and trying to minimize that impact. Right in, right out tend to not cause a complication. But the report that I've got in front of me does speak about that future movement being restricted or eliminated. I'm still working my way through the report, but it is anticipated to be restricted as we move forward in the future.
Okay, thank you. I will reflect Councillor Jansen's comments in regards to the setback. I would prefer that building be pushed to the front of Souk Road or Island Highway. And which leads into they're attractive buildings. I'm not saying they're not, and I understand that developers it's their babies, and so I'm certainly not wanting to criticize their baby, but because it is fronting Island Highway, it is going to be a major presentation and a representation of who and what Colwood is. And I would love to see some aesthetics or working just from a facade standpoint so that it's not a warehousing industrial look, but more of a community look and more of what we're aspiring for towards Island Highway. But again, I will leave that in staff's hands. It's just my comment around just the facade of the building. I would like to see some have it leveled up a little bit. Outside of those comments, I'm good. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'm on the same lines of everybody else. Quite like the project. Wonder about moving it forward. That's probably discussions between staff and the developer. We could change the setback line to 0, but that doesn't mean you have to build to 0. So I guess if there's an appetite there, that would be interesting. I guess I'm a little concerned. The parking, the information I have here, it's on page 56 of our report, where it says required parking 219 stalls and provided 183 stalls. And yet the language in the report seems to indicate the parking is adequate. Am I missing something there?
Through the chair to Councillor Parkinson. So I think some of the confusion, and these might be going back and forth with the developer. So our current parking requirements for industrial, general light industrial and warehouse are based on a number of employees, which, as you can all imagine, makes it an impossibility to calculate when you're just reviewing a concept plan that is yet to be occupied, and thus we don't actually know what the ultimate number of employees will be. I think what the concept plan does provide is an assurance that they can accommodate 183 parking stalls on site, which would allow double the amount of employees. So if you double 183 times 2, that's 365 potential employees that could be accommodated. We do not foresee that they will ever exceed 360 plus 66 employees on that site, given the configuration and that there's 20 loading bays and small office components to the site. So because we have that somewhat aged parking requirement that makes it almost impossible for us to forecast how many employees there will ever be. But from the staff perspective, we're satisfied that the proposed development will more than meet its needs. And we are fairly certain and confident. We have some comment on the parking provisions included in the traffic impact assessment. We've asked their consultant to look into that and provide us some reassurance that the calculation for their parking needs is based on a more current and updated standard for an industrial. And they've been also in coordination with the consultants that are doing the parking study for the city of Colwood that are working on updating our standards. So we're well aware that our current standard is just not quite easy to quantify at the moment, but we're quite satisfied that what they can prove out will more than sufficiently account for the needs of the site. But we'll come back to council with a memo on the impact assessment.
I could also advise it now because I've got it in front of me right now. For industrial, the supply is intended to be 148 and the bylaw requirement is 112. For office, the bylaw requirement is 34 and the supply is intended to be 34. So if we were going to bring forward current comparables in adjacent municipalities, about 112 is what's specified in other areas. And bringing it forward into the potential new study consideration ultimately just moves the provision of 1 stall per 81 square meters of industrial provision to 1 stall per 100 square meters. Still working my way through the report, but that's the up-to-date information in the report, which shows that they're exceeding their parking requirements from their intention as of right now.
Okay, thank you. So I'm certainly gonna support the recommendation. I think to me it's a little premature to waive a public hearing. I mean, we could do that later if we do first and second readings. But at present, I think maybe a little premature on the waiving the public hearing. But I'll support the recommendation. That's it for me.
Thank you. And Councillor Logan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I do want to welcome Louise, Chris, and Brian to Colwood. And I will say we are very excited for this project. And I think it's appropriately placed and it takes over from a car lot, which I think is a plus unto itself. So I'm very excited actually for this project. A couple of questions, I guess, through you, Mr. Chair, to Yasmin. So I noticed the property along the Millstream Creek will be turned over to the province. That's something different. I'm used to that being maybe gifted as park or protected as a riparian area. So giving it over to the province is a bit different for me. So do we know that they'll actually accept it?
Sorry.
I'll let Brent take that one.
Yeah, thank you very much. Fish-bearing habitat, so salmonoid streams and that sort of stream channel of which Millstream Creek is. There is a desire to return it to the Crown, but that's a very interesting point that you raised. Will the province take it? About 5 or 6 years ago, they started pushing back and the Crown becomes an ambiguous thing. Regardless, it'll be, the intention there is that it will be provided and dedicated for environmental benefit. And if the Crown is unwilling and accepting, we'll take it as park quite gladly. It's, as I say, it's a fish-bearing aquatic habitat that has high ecological value.
Great, thank you. And then just a couple of other points. I know that corridor is part of the the transit future plan. So just wondering, just wanting to make sure that our right-of-way is protected to enact that plan, I guess would be my first question. I'm hearing it is. And then my kind of along the same lines is, I noticed the frontage improvements are to comply to bylaw. And I know some of the frontage has been completed. So I'm wondering what kind of additions would be required as a result of this, like lamp standards, that type of deal?
So through the chair, Brent speaking. So BC Transit, as part of their coordination and for their future transit network intent, which is in design stage right now, has met with a lot of these relevant property owners. This team may not have met directly with them, but the Galaxy and previous landowner had. So we are aware of their improvements. The land access and issues have already been sort of sussed out with BC Transit taking that lead. And at this time, Transit has signed off on this intent without requiring further additional works at this time. When you speak about frontage improvements, it's that integration of what's existing along the Island Highway and that built form here today. We're trying to avoid some retaining walls at the back, which deal a little bit with some of the topographic challenges, and also looking at just what was discussed about here, that building offset, the interface, if there should be parking in between the street and the building for the sort of use. So we're looking at heavy landscape component in there, and then we're working with the developer through the development permit process to do that. You've also raised question about the other aspect of the front, which is the Wilford Road side. Now, Wilford Road was designed many years ago as largely an industrial service road. It's got a wide right-of-way, a lot amount of street parking, and because of that perpetual use to the land, as it's defined in the OCP as that mixed use sort of employment, industrial sort of land base, we're looking to keep that same look going along. It's got a good use for vehicles and trucks, which is important for their turning movement and access to the site, as well as the parking that's being provided on those road edges. So very much of what you see today will carry on through the development of the site.
That's great. Thank you, Brent. I do appreciate that. And I will note that we did waive a public hearing for the same zoning on the Allendale district lands. And I think to be consistent, certainly this complies with the OCP, and I certainly would support waiving the public hearing for this zone should that motion come forward. So that's it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Logan. Anybody else wish to speak to what's on?
Councillor Baxter, if I could just interject for briefly as it relates to the frontage component.
Certainly.
I do understand that there's concern about that, and perhaps the preference is to have the building fronting onto the highway. For our purposes, that's not functional. What we've tried to do is minimize the amount of parking in front of the units, but it is necessary in our mind for the functionality of the building that we're going to develop. The front entrances to those units and to those spaces, those are the front doors for those spaces. We're not looking for a sea of parking by any means in front of it. I think the building profile with I think we're 24 clear plus the office, we're going to be in the neighborhood of about 36 feet to the top of the office structure. And I think that the street appeal, given the landscaping, what we're planning is going to be quite good. So I understand the concern, but we feel really that it's important that we retain some component of parking at the front of that building. So I just thought it was important to make that point. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have in front of us the basic recommendation moved by Councillor Jansen. And does anybody wish to speak to that further? If not, I have a few things to say. Is somebody trying to speak? No? Okay. So in the OCP, under the heading Mixed Use Employment Centers, on page 222 of the OCP, it refers to site buildings to provide a safe pedestrian network that supplements the streetscape. And then on page 223, it says where large blocks are unavoidable, provide publicly accessible mid-block pedestrian and bicycle pathway. And then it goes on, create pedestrian streets within the retail development that also connect to the surrounding streets. Now, when it comes to large blocks, you won't see many blocks larger than the one between Wilford and Island Highway. And so I think given what's in the OCP, there should be a publicly accessible walkway from the Island Highway to Wilford Road. And a lot of that could be provided just by painted lines on the parking lot. And I note that in the first one of those quotes I read, it is talking about a safe pedestrian network within the parking lot. And the only small adjustment that would need to be made is that there would have to be, say, a 2-meter walkway down the side of the building. I would like to hear staff's comments on that.
So this is thank you very much for that. And as the chair, Councillor Baxter, this is something that I've looked at for a fair number of times when we subdivided the courthouse beside it. I tried to pursue it there. And in here, I looked at the topography of the land and tried to bring it forward. Because there's such a large grade break between the Wilford frontage and the Island Highway frontage, plus or minus 20 meters, it means a concrete staircase. Although it wasn't overtly discussed with this developer here, we could certainly bring it to the mix. But one of the concerns is that the most reliable pedestrian route? Wintertime is slip hazards, and it's quite literally 200 feet of stairs. I know that those are exercise patterns, and if council wish to see that along the stretch, we certainly be welcoming of hear that. But it has been considered. The pedestrian ways through the parking lot and the integration to the built form is something that we will definitely attend to with the development permit stage. But I'm more taking your question to going from the Island Highway down to Wilford Road in that consideration of the 20-meter separation.
Okay, thank you for that. And the 20-meter separation is large, but it can be overcome with stairs, and stairs can be provided with non-slip surfaces or even a covering to prevent any snow landing on the stairs. I think it's a really useful thing to consider, since if you look at people on Wilford Road, if they want to walk to one of the food establishments on Island Highway, they've got an awfully long walk, to get to Jasmine's, and a mid-block walkway in that huge block would be really useful for access to the bus route. It's almost twice as far to walk to a bus stop for people in building 3 than it would be if they could walk through the site, as well as access to food and at lunchtime, things like that. So I don't think you build a good city center if people have to get in their cars to drive to the adjacent street, because there's no way to walk there reasonably. And I'm 70 years old, and I'd be happy to skip up those stairs. Not quite 70, but I'd be happy to go up those stairs. And I'm sure the rest of you would too. So I'm going to leave that for now and just concentrate on the base recommendation. And since there were no more speakers, we'll take a vote on that. And that is just the recommendation as on your agenda page, I believe. So all those against that, please raise your hands. And seeing no hands raised, committee is in favor of that, and that's passed. Now, on the subject of the building moving forward, what I'm hearing from the developer is that doesn't work very well because they want vehicle access to each face of these light industrial buildings, and I can understand that. But what I'm hearing from staff and developer is that a lot of landscaping is going to be added, perhaps more to the front than parking lot than the mid parking lot. And I think that might improve the look hugely. However, does any councillor wish to put forward a motion asking staff to look into that, moving the building forward, or any other level of request to staff? I'm not seeing any reaction on that. Oh, Mayor Martin. Mayor Martin.
Unmute, Rob.
I thought I had unmuted. I'm happy to leave it in staff's hands. Like, I'm not looking at us doing it like a 0 right now, but I do wish to demonstrate to the developers that there is an aesthetic issue that's very much a concern, and so that, you know, if we're going to allow parking to be occurring within those buildings, we need to be drawing the eyes away from that parking, and I don't think we're doing that just through landscaping. So I guess I will look to staff on what would be the best motion that would give you the most openness to begin those discussions with the developer on how do we best achieve.
Thank you very much. It's through the presentation tonight, Yasmin has identified that we do have a consideration for side yard setback that'll form part of the zoning consideration. Interestingly enough, Councillor Baxter's comments about a walkway are forming part of that in my head. You know, I do hear, you've got me thinking off my feet now, but I do hear what has been expressed as the developer has heard what's been expressed. Knowing that there's a willingness to consider that front yard setback, but not being descriptive of it, means that we can go back and work with the developer and at least speak to it to try and minimize that parking intent. We have heard his words clearly. It's something that has been discussed before, but hearing council's words as well will allow us a bit of room to come back. And then if there's a variance request necessary, we can tie it in with the other one. It's I guess what's a little bit unclear to me is if we are not successful in achieving that, we would come back to council and advise of that at the consideration prior to public hearing, so that way it could all be wrapped together and council considered appropriate at that time.
Yeah, and that's fine by me. So I will withdraw that. I guess we don't need an additional motion, just as long as staff understand the concerns moving forward. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. Another issue that was raised was the waiving of the public hearing. And if anybody wants to make a motion on that, now would be appropriate. And I see Mayor Martin's hand up first.
I'm sorry, no, it was not. That was from the last time. My apologies.
Oh, sorry.
For it right now.
Jensen?
Yeah, no, I'm actually fine with us going to a public hearing.
Okay. Councillor Jensen?
I did raise my hand. I think there's a lot of consistency here with what's happening at Allendale. I think we've done it there. I believe, honestly, I mean, the only people that are going to get notice for the public hearing are the neighboring businesses, which is the courthouse and the car lot. So I would suggest that we might be able to risk this one out, because I do believe that what's proposed here, and to be fair, I'm fine with the proposal as it stands, and I think there's a few tweaks, and I'll leave that to staff, but I believe that we can risk out the public hearing and forego that. That would be my motion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jensen, and I've also got Councillor Parkinson's hand up.
I guess pretty much the same comments as before. I see the arguments for not doing a public hearing, but I'm not there yet. I think we should wait. If this comes back and we give it first and second reading, I think that's the time to discuss whether we want to do a public hearing or not. I recognize that we didn't at Allendale. Perhaps there's some similarities. There's certainly some differences. This is what I would call the front door to our town. So we want to be very careful. But yeah, I could be persuaded at some point to forego a public hearing, but not there yet.
Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I guess my headspace is in the same place as Councillor Parkinson's right now. I guess with the Allendale pit there, when we were doing this, it was a known quantity at that point when we made that decision. And even then we had a question and we withheld it until another question was answered. Then we went ahead and forwent the public hearing. So I mean, I don't think we have to make that decision right tonight. That's my opinion. And first and second reading, be more than happy to entertain it at that point in time. So I would not support not holding a public hearing at this point in time. Thank you.
Okay, and Mayor Martin, your hand is up again.
It is, and I'll reflect what Councillor Parkinson and Kobayashi just said, but I would like a clarification answer from staff. Is the assumption that we can waive the public hearing after second reading? Is that correct, or does it need to be done now? Like, why? I'm wondering why it's before us tonight and us having to make that decision point.
I think the intent, if you read the staff recommendation on the report, is for these recommendation to go forward to council, including giving first and second reading consideration to these proposal at the December 14 council meeting. So I think it's just a way to not expedite, but to respect some of the timing of the developer, as well as our processing timeline and how we want to support that that process that will break down over the Christmas holidays, and trying to stick to our processing timelines and giving these first and second reading at the next December 14 council meeting. So that's the intent of asking now to whether we waive the public hearing or not. But we can certainly prepare a memo at that for that December 14 meeting, asking council if at that point you would like to waive the public hearing. Otherwise, then it would become at the January 11th council meeting that then we ask.
So, sorry, Chair, just as a follow-up question, can I just please get some clarification from staff? So there's been several points that have been asked or talked about tonight. So for example, the setback has been discussed tonight, the right-of-way been discussed this evening. When are those things being addressed? Are they being addressed after second reading? Like, are you planning on addressing all of those things in the next week? Like, I'm actually a little surprised that we've got first and second reading coming up next week with the things that we've just discussed. So could I just get a clarification on process on when those things that have been discussed this evening would be worked on?
Thank you very much. Through the chair to Mayor Martin, we're asked to work as best as possible to populate agendas, to be communicative with our residents and council as best as possible. Because of that, we have to make assumptions sometimes on when things will go forward. That is why second reading is scheduled for the next meeting of council. The public hearing is after that point, and so the consideration for council on to waive or not can happen after that point. And yes, the developer has been part of this discussion. We'll be on the phone this week talking to them. Interestingly enough, some of the pedestrian routes that have been discussed tonight are forming part of this TIA package that I'm reviewing as we're in the meeting tonight. So we'll look at clarity to try and address some of Councillor Baxter's concerns, and as also expressed through council. And so what we would attempt to do is provide a statement at that public hearing of what we've heard at this meeting tonight and how it's been addressed. The greater issue in terms of timing, which may affect that public hearing or may affect the progress as envisioned in our short-term plan, our short-term council agenda, is that building frontage offset. As we talk to the developer about, you've heard very, very strong statements from the developer tonight. These are not new to the developer. We've spoken about it with staff and are at this point for this consideration. So staff would be required to provide a memo as to the outcome of that at that consideration in time, and then council could always choose that it receives the input from the public, receives the memo from staff, and then either continues to progress it along or ask for reconsideration at that time.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
That just reminds me, I want to congratulate staff on including the next steps in the development process in the report. And I hope we see that in every report going forward. That's really, really useful. Probably more useful if you want to put dates on them, but I can't necessarily always do that. So I have to go back to Councillor Jansen. Did you make a motion that the public hearing be waived? And would you like us to go forward with that now?
So I did, and I've heard my peers, and I'm going to withdraw that motion this time and perhaps bring it up at a future date. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And I have a question for staff. The creek and access to the creek, no matter who owns it, but especially if we own the land next to it, is there access, vehicular access?
Through the chair to Councillor Baxton, there is certainly not vehicular access to the creek, nor is there pedestrian access provided this area. Just north of here is where fish ladders were installed 12 or 15 years ago. And access is very, very tough because of the environmental sensitivities of that creek edge. So there's no formal pedestrian route and no vehicular access. The built form intent is intended to come to a near edge of that creek while remaining a wind firm tree edge before the slope as it goes down. So what you'll see is the stormwater management as it comes through the site and the lands, and then it'll go into a more naturalized scope without provisions for public access through the lands or down to the creek at this point.
Yeah, I was thinking more like maintenance access or emergency access.
No, you saw my head shake there. Sorry, I didn't mean to be light on the question. No, there is not. It's something that that maybe the grade's a little bit tight here. I'm familiar with this creek and its edge. It's quite steep sided. It may be another location a little bit north of here, in and around where our pump station's located. It's a little bit smoother, and there's actually some pathways that are there.
Okay, I'll leave it in your hands. Your department will be doing the maintenance. So, and on the subject of the walkway, I would just, I'm not going to make any motion on that, but I would leave you looking at that. And I would also suggest that it may be possible to have it partly on this property and partly on the adjacent property when that rezones. So there's lots of different ways of skinning that cat, as you're well aware. Okay, then unless I see anybody else put their hand up, I think we're done with this. Or do we take a vote? Damn, I can't remember. We didn't take a vote. Okay, all those against what Councillor Jansen has moved, the recommendation, please put your hands up. And I'm not seeing any hands. That has passed. God, and it's only 7:43. Okay. And the final item tonight is 201 Goldfinch Road Development Variance Permit application. And so Yasmin Hernandez is presenting on this, I believe.
Yeah, go for it.
I did not prepare a presentation for this one, as the consideration is quite simple. It's just the frontage on the street, just varying that 16 meter. But I'm here to answer any questions that you may have. The applicant, I believe, the applicant's agent, Rachel Sansom, is also joining us tonight. If you have any questions for her or myself, we're happy to answer, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Parkinson's hand is up.
It's pretty straightforward. I'd be prepared to move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Parkinson. Mayor Martin.
No, sorry, I was going to do the same thing.
Okay, so I have a mover. Any discussion? And Councillor Parkinson, I assume your hand was just up from the motion?
That's correct.
Okay, then we can go to a vote on this. All those against the development variance permit? No hands against. So I think we're unanimous throughout this evening's meeting. Well done. Next meeting date is Monday, January the 18th, 2021. The next meeting of the Committee of the Whole. Of course, there is council a week from now. And so we'll move on to adjournment. And Councillor Logan's hand is already up. And unless I see an objection to adjournment, we're adjourned. I don't think you can object. We're done. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Doesn't